What's up, guys? Welcome to another video. This video today is going to be about functions, but this time we're going to talk about parameters and arguments. So it's going to be a continuation of our last functions video, and I'm just going to teach you about the second part of functions, basically, because it gets a little more complicated. So again, I have that same picture that I showed before of the function here. So we've got a function named sum, but then here are the parameters, x and y. So you can put data or like little variables in the parentheses of a function, and they're called parameters. And what the parameters do is they let you return values and do different stuff with the function to make it more reusable, basically. So as you can see here, they put x plus y and then the return keyword, and then they put result equals sum 4 or 5. So what this would do is it would just take these two parameters, x and y, and add them together in this case. And then when you call the function sum, you can put 4 and 5, and if you log it out to the console, it would say 9. Okay? So let's go ahead and go in and actually write some functions that take parameters and then add some arguments in so that we can do some calculations with our functions and make them a little more reusable, a little more robust. Okay? So I'm going to go to the files that we've been working in here, the JavaScript course files, and I'm going to name this file 7-parameters arguments.html, and then I'm going to go ahead and get my boilerplate code in here. I'm going to title the web page JS functions with parameters. Okay, and then we're just going to write all of our code in our script tags like we've been doing. And then we're just gonna, I got some notes prepared here that you can take down and copy in your own text editor if you want. I suggest you do, so that hopefully you'll understand this a little bit better. But so just have here, like, why are arguments and parameters important for JS functions? Parameters and arguments make functions more reusable by giving them the ability to perform different calculations and actions based on user input. This makes functions much more reusable, which is good for limiting the amount of code you have to write. Okay? So parameters, they go inside the parentheses after the function name. They act as placeholders for data, so pretty much like variables. And you can give parameters any name you want, but you should try to make them descriptive, okay? So that's really important. You can put anything you want for a parameter, but you want to make it descriptive to what you're trying to actually do with the function so that it makes sense to you and other developers if they look at your code. And as far as arguments go, the number one thing to remember about them is they go outside of the function. So when you're calling the function, that's where they go. They don't go in the function. So people often, even like experienced developers, they flip the meaning of parameter and argument, and you might hear other developers call parameters arguments and vice versa. But how I remember them is I think of two people having an argument, and then like a bouncer or somebody coming over to them and say, hey guys, take your argument outside. Okay, so arguments should always be outside of the function when you're calling the function, and parameters are inside. So that just helps me remember the difference. Hopefully that'll, maybe help you too. Alright guys, so let's go ahead and get started and actually do a couple of examples and functions with parameters here. So I'm just going to make a single line comment here, and I'm going to say function with parameters and arguments. Okay, and then we'll go ahead and create one. So let's just do a simple one. We'll do function, and I'll call this one totalSum. And then I'll put two parameters. I'll say num1, num2, and then my curly braces. And then I'm going to return, I want this function to return num1 plus num2. And then let's go ahead and call it. So I'm going to log this one to the console. Say console.log. Then we'll call function totalSum, put our parentheses, and instead of num1 and num2, I'm going to put arguments. So I'll put 10 and 10. Okay? So now let's go ahead. I'm going to open up the web page and we'll see if that worked. So I'm going to go live. I'm going to right click and inspect, go to my console. Oops, we misspelled console. So let's spell that correctly. There we go. So there we go. We called our function by logging into the console, and we did totalSum, and we filled in our arguments here of 10 and 10, and 10 plus 10 equals 20, okay? So let's go ahead and we'll do another one. So we'll just put another example. And how about for this function, we'll list out some of our favorite colors. So I'll put function faveColors, and I'll say color 1, color 2, and then let's return, this time we'll return a sentence or a string of text. So I'm going to say return, and then I'm going to do some code that we haven't gone over yet, but this is called a template string, and it just helps you write out sentences and text in JavaScript. So I'm going to do 2 backticks. So backticks are just over your tab button on your keyboard. That's probably something you've never used before. And then I'm going to put my favorite colors are, and then I'm going to put a money sign, curly braces, and color 1. Say and then again, money sign, curly braces, color 2, and a period. So this is just how, in these things called template strings, which we're going to go over in a later lesson, this is just how you insert like variables, or in this case parameters that you want to enter into this text. That'll be user generated, okay? So again, don't really worry about that, just kind of pay attention to the example of the functions and parameters, okay? So let's go ahead and log this. Let's say console.log, and let's say faveColors. Call it, and then we'll put in our arguments where our parameters are. So I'll say black, oops, it's text, so we need our quotes, right? So let's say black, comma, blue, and save. And there we are. So my favorite colors are black and blue, and we can put any arguments we want in here. We can say red and green, red and green, okay? And then just to illustrate that you can put anything you want in here, you could literally put bus and horse in here as your parameters, which makes no sense, but it'll still work as long as we put this in here. Say bus, horse, save, and it still is generating colors. So again, you can name your parameters whatever you want, but you don't want to do that. You want to be descriptive so that your code makes sense and logical, okay? So I'm going to give you a challenge now that I want you to do on your own. I want you to pause the video and try to do this on your own. So I want you to create a function called multiply that takes 2 parameters, x and y, have the function return x times y, and call the function with 2 number arguments of your choice and log it to the console. So go ahead and pause the video and do this now, and I will come back to you and we'll do it together. Alright, hopefully that wasn't too difficult. Hopefully you're able to do that. If not, it's totally okay. I'm going to go ahead and do it with you now. So let's go ahead and get this here. So we're going to create a function called multiply. So let's say function multiply, and then we'll say x and y for our parameters, and then we'll return x times y, and then we can go ahead and we'll log our function to the console. So let's say console.log multiply, and then we'll do our parentheses, and let's say 5 and 5. And 5 times 5 is 25, and there it is. So hopefully you're able to do this on your own without too much trouble. If not, it's totally okay, guys. You're just learning, and you will eventually, this will sink into your head. You just gotta keep practicing every day. So that's pretty much it for functions and arguments. I do want to actually show you one more thing though. I want to show you something called a default parameter. So what a default parameter is it's a parameter that you set, and then you give it like a default value, so that if nobody enters in anything for that value, it'll have that default value and it'll just run off of that. So to just show you an example of that, I'm going to do another function. So we'll say function. Here, let's actually make a comment up here, separate this a little bit, and we'll say default value parameter. Oops. Default value parameter, and we'll say function, and we'll put let's just name this one subtract. We'll do some subtraction here, and then parentheses, and we'll say, we'll just use letters. We'll say j is one parameter, and then we'll say k, but this time we'll put k equals 10. Okay, instead of just putting k, we'll put k equals 10, and then we're just going to go ahead and return j minus k. Okay, so just some subtraction, and then we'll go ahead and call it. So let's log it to the console again. Let's say console dot log, and then we'll call subtract, and for our first argument, let's just put 20, and then we're not going to put anything for the second argument. We'll see what happens. We'll save, and we got 10. Okay, so again, because we didn't put anything for k, we didn't put like a comma and another value, it defaulted to 10. So 20 minus 10 equals 10. Okay, but then we could do the same thing. We could actually put a value here. So let's put 20 minus 5, and now it's 15. Okay, so those are default parameters, and we'll just go back and keep that there. Okay, so I'll finish off one more thing here that I want to go over for functions, and that's the fact that functions can actually call other functions, and it's something that you're going to be doing a lot when you're building real projects. You're going to have functions that call other functions so that your application works like a real application, because you're not just going to have like a bunch of functions that do one thing constantly in your code. You're going to have functions that call other functions and do multiple things and take user input and show different things to the user, stuff like that. So let's just make a comment. We'll put functions calling other functions. And for this little mini project, I'm actually going to make a couple of HTML elements. We'll do some HTML with our JavaScript. So I'm going to make an input element up here. It's going to be a text input. I'm going to give it an ID of, let's just give it an ID of input. That's fine. And then below it, I'll have a button. And we'll give it a type of button. And we'll give it an ID of submit button. And we'll make the text of the button just say submit. Okay, so we have a kind of like a little form here. And then we'll go here and we'll set up some code for a mini project. So I'm going to say const, we'll say input L for input element. We'll say that's going to be equal to document dot get element by ID, and then let's grab our input ID, just copy paste it, and then below that we'll say const, we'll say submit button, and same thing equals to document dot get element by ID. And we'll go up here and just copy paste our ID again. Submit button. Okay. And we're going to do a couple of functions here. So first we'll do a function, and we'll call this function log input. And this log input function, what it's going to do is it's going to log whatever text that we put in this box to the console, and it's going to do that when we hit submit. But that'll be a separate function. So let's just do this. Let's say console.log, and what we'll do is we'll put input L because we put our input in a variable, and so we'll just use it now. We'll say input element, and I'm going to use a built-in function called .value. And what the .value does is it takes the value of, in this case, the input here, the value, and the value meaning whatever we type in here. It takes it and it puts it where we want it, or wherever we want it to, and in this case, the console.log, okay? So, got that function, and I'm going to write another function underneath it. First, I'll put an event listener on our submit button, so I'll say submit button dot add event listener, say click, and then run a function called, we'll just call it render. We're going to be rendering it, I guess, but it'll be in the console. So we'll just call it render. That's fine. We'll say function render parentheses, and remember this is connected to our button when we click it. This render function. So all we're going to do is call this log input function. So we'll say log input parentheses, and that's it. Okay, so now when I hit submit, this click event function is going to call this log input function and run the code in here. So let's see, and it should, whatever I type in here should come out into our console when I hit submit. So let's see, just type some gibberish. There it is. Type hello world. Okay, so there it is, guys. Type some more gibberish. It's kind of fun just to mess around with programming, but hopefully, so go ahead and copy what I did here, and then just have fun typing stuff in there, submit it, and then you can see it come out in the console. But this is just, it's kind of like a silly example, but it's just to show you that functions can call other functions, because that's what you'll be doing a lot when you build real projects. So that's going to be it for this video, guys. That's everything that you need to know about arguments and parameters and functions calling other functions. So thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.